was not the Sugar Ray version of
I was
Fly,
gonna
but
say,
Nick Drake's
put your
version
arms
of Fly.
around me, baby.
We said, we last talked about Nick Drake.
Wait, you need some numbers, Josh.
I was going to ask you right after this.
Oh, you were.
Go for it.
Okay.
Good cover.
Number 63 in the 1970s, number 12 in 1971, 265 overall, all according to Best Ever Albums. But Rolling Stone gave this the big heave-ho, did not include that in the top 500. So,
Okay.
Was it on the previous?
I don't know. I don't. Oh, in Rolling Stone, I don't know.
Okay.
It's the third highest ranked album for Nick Drake in Best Ever Albums.
Well, he only has 3 albums.
5, right? But 5's the ones that we covered before. 5 leaves left is ahead of it, and then we're still going to cover Pink Moon. So
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that.
We'll be celebrating his entire discography on Feminist Stacks. Yes.
We last discussed him way back on episode 24 with his debut album, 5 Leaves Left. After that, which came out in 1969, and it was poorly marketed by the label and poorly supported by the label, and it also sold poorly. So Nick
Trifecta.
Yeah. Nick Drake was not happy with aspects of the album as well, and this just all contributed to his depression, as we talked about at length way back in that episode. So I'm sure that colored his view on how the album went. Also around this time, he started to retreat from live performances. He had negative experiences from crowds opening for bands like Fairport Convention, and solo live performances were poorly attended, and he was comfortable on stage. So he was one of those artists that really shouldn't perform live, or wasn't made to perform live, and maybe only in the studio. His record producer, Joe Boyd, still wanted to capitalize on his talent, though. And since Drake was disappointed by sales of the last album, he agreed to a more jazzier pop sound that includes drum and bass, aka a more commercial type of sound for this album. And on March 5th, 1971, this album was released, BRYTER LAYTER. Like the first album, it includes backing musicians from Fairport Convention, and 2 songs by John Cale on this album, Northern Sky and Fly. He wrote those. Other session musicians on this album include Mike Kowalski and Ed Carter of the Beach Boys. Unfortunately, this album was also a commercial failure and had mixed critical reaction. Some magazines and places liked it, some didn't. And then soon after this, Joe Boyd sold his label, which Nick Drake was on, which season, to Island Records, which we've mentioned before, and he moved to Warner Brothers to work on album soundtracks inexplicably, and left Nick Drake behind. This made Drake even more depressed than he already was, and
I can imagine.
Poor guy.
He gave one of his final live performances during this time where he walked off stage halfway through the set and didn't come back. And but the new label, Island Records, did want to promote his albums and encouraged him to, go on radio shows and do interviews and all the promotional stuff, but he refused to do that. And,
isn't that the easiest thing ever to guess right there? Hey, I know you hate performing live, even though you're a musician. Let's have you do a little, let's have you talk about it.
Yeah. So he withdrew even further from life at this point and stayed in his room, became like a true recluse, and was heavy into marijuana, as I mentioned back on that first episode, and also was trying to get psychiatric help, but he was resistant to that, taking antidepressants. And his sister is quoted as saying this was a really bad time, and Drake told her that things started to go wrong from this point on. So on that high note, as I do with all my bios, I see that is
Mr. Sunshine.
That is
you got a new nickname from Baby Driver to Mr. Sunshine.
I'll leave it there, because the next album is his last one, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the road.
Fair enough.
A couple trivia facts. 2 of these songs appear in movie soundtracks, or at least 2. Fly was in the Royal Tenenbaum soundtrack.
I was just going to say, it's got to be Wes Anderson. Which Wes Anderson movies are we talking about? Yeah.
And one of these things first was on the Garden State soundtrack, which I thought was hilarious since I brought that up last.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Episode.
Venn diagram, Josh.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all
Also,
happening.
the song "Northern Skies" frequently featured on "This Is Us," the NBC hit TV show, which I
Can't
watch.
say I ever will watch that based on
But I
what
know-
I've seen in the previews.
I know
Yeah.
other people who do, and so maybe they recognize that from that. So that's all I have for bio, and I know we were very negative on his debut album. In fact, I think we listed it in the superlatives as an album we most disappointed by, or something to that effect.
I believe it was your choice, Josh, for
Yeah.
most disappointed by. Yeah.
And so what did you guys think of Brighter Later this time around? Let's start with Matt.
Go ahead, Matt.
So this was much better.
Yes,
much better
agreed.
than the previous record. I like my Nick Drake lighter, and brighter, and actually, I thought when I first read it, I was like, oh, I was like brighter, lighter. I was like, this is brighter than that. Oh, it's brighter later. So, but I like this album a lot, and it just goes to show what you can do, like what he can do when he just makes the guitar tone and just the musical, the background behind him just happier, I can't really speak a whole lot to the lyrics because, again, I didn't pay attention a ton to them. But as far as just an overall, musical aesthetic, I really like this. This was a great album to probably just wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, sit on the back porch, read the paper, just a good way to start the day. Very, it was a happy sounding record. And some of it's upbeat, like this, like Hazy Jane 1 comes off. It's almost like this, or Hazy Jane 2. That was interesting.
Not lyrically though, Matt.
No, right.
Yeah,
and so
just FYI,
and that's totally understandable. I'm not surprised by that at all. But that was this upbeat song. It's very almost kind of country. I don't know if it sounded like there was a little bit of a slide. I don't know. It wasn't a slide guitar, but it seemed kind of like it's got a little bit of that country twang in it. But I like the entire thing. The instrumentals were great. There's 3 instrumentals peppered in here, and I did go back and I was like, maybe I missed something with the previous record. So I went back and I did listen to 5 Leaves Left, at least not the entire album, but I just kind of listened to the beginning of some of the songs just to refresh my memory. And I don't change my opinion of that. I mean, that is it's a darker sounding album. It's sad. It's like I got enough. And this is much more like, the music makes him sound happier here, and I just like that more. I don't think there's a bad song on here. I think maybe at the time of A City Clock was one of the ones that seemed a little bit more on the sadder side, but Fly was a great song. Northern Sky was a great song. Poor Boy was a little bit on the long side. It's the longest song on this, but it was still good. It's almost it has like a bossa nova kind of sound to it. But I like the instrumentation. There's guitar, the piano. There's the horns, there must be a soprano sax in here, I think. It's at some point. There's some sort of saxophone going on.
There's an alto sax, I think.
Alto sax, okay.
On one of them.
Yeah, and the strings. There are strings on both this record and the previous one, but again, these strings it was a happier sound, right? The cello song from the last record was just like, oh my God. So this is a 180 for me. I really like this, and I would totally recommend this for people. This is great acoustic, kind of singer-songwriter stuff. It's got enough variation here. It's upbeat, and it's relatively short, as all these records were. So, big fan. I like this Nick Drake much better. It sounds like a different person, at least musically. And to clean a stack here, Josh, in 2003, when Rolling Stone first did their top 500 list, it does say here that was ranked 245 initially, but has since
fell
fallen
out
off,
of the countdown from 245.
Yeah, well, we'll keep in mind the Rolling Stone first did their list in 2003, and then they did it again in 2010 or something like that. And this new one that they just did is totally different, So it's not surprising because there's a lot of new albums are on there, and this is one of the ones that got kicked off. So gotcha. Yes, it's no longer on it. But thumbs up for me. I loved it.
So what did you think, John?
I wasn't as bullish. It's I like it better than Five Leaves Left. I will say that. Five Leaves Left, I didn't. The irony is, I don't know if I disliked Five Leaves Left as much as you guys did. I just found it to be a little bit stock for me and a little bit samey. But I didn't have a visceral reaction to it in a negative way. It just kind of was there. I will say the thing that stands out for me on this album is there were 4 tracks I really liked. I liked the introduction into Hazy Jane 2, which actually was a semi-upbeat song lyrically. And so I think I had a little bit of Matt's take where I was like, ooh, some wrinkles in here. I really liked Northern Sky on the back end at number 9, and I really liked One of These Things First. And the irony is I'm listening to these without looking at Spotify. Then I come back and I see that those are by far the songs with the most plays. And I said, well, I'm not alone apparently in how I listen to this album. There still is something missing for me in a lot of Nick Drake's compositions. I don't know how to describe it. It blends into the wall. There were 2 or 3 touch points, guys, that I wanted to touch on. One was the first time around, I saw similarities between Nick Drake and Scott Walker, but there's something atmospherically about Scott Walker and Scott Ford that I connected with more. At that time, I described Scott Ford as great late evening music. It gave a comforting vibe to me, and I think I probably heard that album like how Matt heard this album as a breakfast album. A certain point of the day where it gives you a thing. It just didn't give that to me. I also have come to realize that I think Nick Drake was Elliott Smith before Elliott Smith, in terms of another artist who I have a up and down relationship with, where there's certain things that I connect with and certain things that I don't. There's occasional bursts of compositional tightness and refined music that I really connect with, and then other times it just kind of washes over me, all the way down to a little bit of their personality and their story. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that they sound exactly the same, because they don't. It's more the thematic stuff and the composition and the type of songs that are being written, the type of singer-songwriter that they want to be. As Matt mentioned, the instrumentation I thought was a step up on this quite a bit, which helped to save the songs a little bit. I think kind of a little bit of it is he's impenetrable to me lyrically, in that I can see his viewpoint and I can get what he's going for, but I can always tell that he's writing from a place that I don't know if I'll ever truly understand, because it's impenetrable to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but would you say, like, I mean, because as the not lyric guy, I don't really know a whole lot of what he's saying. Like, are there at the chime,
themes?
while I'm talking, pull up the lyrics to "At the Chime of a City Clock," for example, because I think that's a really good example of "A Poor Boy" is another one as well. When you look at these lyrics, and I would juxtapose it with how it sounds, Matt, and then take a look at what these lyrics are saying. They're not. We talked about Randy Newman. Some of these are like, "Oh, that's a sad song." They're not sad. There's just there's a desperation to them lyrically that really comes through.
Like a depression, would you say?
It's hard to, if I didn't know Nick Drake's narrative, though, I wouldn't know if I'd describe him as depressed as much as I would describe him as disconnected. And so when you talk about him and disconnected and also set apart, and it comes across lyrically, and it doesn't turn me off, but it's hard to truly connect with me lyrically. So I need to go Matt, where I have to connect with the music, and I liked the music better in this, which is why I like this album better, but I didn't like the album so much that it could overwhelm that other part of it, and that's why I'm truly thumbs in the middle on this. Like it better than the other one. We'll be interested to see where he goes in Pink Moon, because this is an album that I could imagine referring people to some of the songs, because the 3 or 4 best songs on this album really did connect with me. It just, as a total composition, wasn't consistent enough for me, that it didn't blend together at points, and that was where it got stuck. It didn't pop like the Paul Simon album did, or the Harry Nilsson album did. It just sort of plateaued a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these songs fit right in with indie rock, which is probably why it was on the Garden State soundtrack. But it's amazing how the instrumentation kind of changes the whole feel and vibe of him as an artist, and to his benefit, really. This album was much more enjoyable. The words that came to mind when I was listening to it were peaceful and mellow, which fits right in with what Matt was saying about listening to it on the morning drinking coffee.
Could I just jump in real quick? Matt, did you pull up the lyrics by any chance?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, yes. But like a perfect example of what I'm talking about is verse 2 of song 3. At the chime, and it's stay indoors beneath the floors, talk with neighbors only. The games you play make people say you're either weird or lonely. Although that's a pretty fantastic set of lyrics there, like in how it sounds. It's like a poem. It's so, and that's one thing I do like about Nick Drake. He has great syncope. I mean, brighter later, right? Looks and sounds great with the assonance and stuff like that. But so stay indoors beneath the floors, talk with neighbors only. The games you play make people say you're either weird or lonely. A city star won't shine too far on account of the way you are, and the beads around your face make you sure to fit back in place. So I love that he did the 1 3 2 4 on the first, the A B A B on the first, and then he did A A B B for the second. So that is one thing I do like about Nick Drake. He's sharp. He's got a poetic thing, but I think it's just that it's impenetrable. And I do think this is the type of album, if I listen to more often, and I probably will revisit this one, I think I'm going to keep liking it the more I listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, he may be lyrically, a good writer lyrically, but maybe he's not putting much emotion into it, and maybe with the narrative or drawing on his own life, he's more just kind of painting pictures, which, I mean, fitting in with his narrative, that makes sense if he's a withdrawn person and not able to tap into those emotions.
His lyrics are gorgeous, though, and when you know his biography, they're clearly autobiographical, but he writes at a distance.
Yep.
The city clown will soon fall down without a face to hide in, and he will lose if he won't choose the one he may confide in. There's another example, right? That sounds fantastic. But you see how that's at a distance? It's not him necessarily. He's just putting it out there.
He's observing.
Yeah.
Yes, but he's observing himself and not willing to go there,
right.
Which would make sense with that. Not to get too, psychoanalysis here, but if he was struggling to access therapy while knowing he needs it, that's the type of verse you can imagine would line up with that worldview, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely. So as I was saying, the different instrumentation really adds to this album. I like how it peppers in different things on every song. You've got the sax and the piano, and you've got strings on a song, which is not heard on other songs, and even on Poor Boy, which I liked. They have the backup singers sing that part in the chorus, and that's different too. So he's really, I just remember Five Leaves Left essentially being like him with the acoustic guitar and like very sparse backing. So there's still
orchestration on that. There's that stuff is still there, and that's kind of the interesting thing, because I don't think the choices that he's made in terms of either the production or the instruments that he's using is all that different, really. But it's almost like that entire album is in a minor key, and this is more in a major key. You know what I mean? It's like a tonal difference that just changes the entire mood of the record. And this is just it's a brighter sound. It's a happier sound. It's a bouncier sound.
It's more up tempo too.
Yeah. And the stuff before is just like more moody and darker.
But the lyrics aren't, if you remember, on Five Leaves Left. The lyrics are much more depressing on this than they were. It's almost they reversed, right?
They're more depressing on this record. Okay.
Oh, the fourth one, the one of these things. I could have been a sailor, could have been a cook, a real live lover, could have been a book. I could have been a signpost, could have been a clock, as simple as a kettle, steady as a rock. I could be here and now. I would be. I should be. But how? I could have been one of these things.
Yeah.
That's pretty, like that's. It doesn't sound like that because I said it's one of the songs I like, but that's pretty bleak, and autobiographical with the eyes there, unlike the other song.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the brighter sound really did it for me on this. I enjoyed this much more. It was very pleasant, and it feels contemporary in a way too. I think you could play this at a Starbucks and people would not question it sounding old or not really.
Yeah.
It would fit in with the mood that Starbucks would be trying to convey at a coffee shop or something.
Especially something like Northern Sky, you could play, and that's actually one of the two songs that is lyrically not. It's a love song. It's actually pretty. Is that one of the ones John Cale wrote?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
It says here on Wikipedia says they're all written by Nick Drake.
Okay.
Really?
Well, Josh disagrees.
It says I don't know.
Now I'm gonna have to look.
Now I have to clean that stuff. Yeah,
Correct.
but it's so interesting because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't surprise me that the lyrics are dark and depressing and sad. But that's just how I listen to music. It's more about what's the music doing, And if he's singing about some sad stuff, okay. But if the music's there and it's bright, that's 95% of what I'm getting out of it is going to come from that music. And so this is the type of record that would make me happy, in that way, even though that's not the message, that's not what he's, clearly the stuff that you're talking about there, John, those are not happy thoughts. But that's not, as a music listener, that is not, my go-to or what I'm looking for.
It's that Brian Wilson thing, because a lot of his stuff sounds bright and sunny, but then is about feeling uncertain and
a lot of artists do, like the Smiths do that, right? Isn't that like one of the,
But that's also what's interesting about that is that's Johnny Marr's guitar parts melded with Morrissey's lyrics. If Morrissey was writing the guitar parts or Johnny Marr was writing the lyrics, that's the equivalent of what Nick Drake's doing here, right? Because he's writing both the music and the lyrics. So he's got a clear juxtaposition as opposed to two people doing two different things and then it merging together. It kind of makes more sense when you think of it as two distinct people, right? With the sound.
Right, but you know what I think, though? I think that if, just in general, not just talking about Nick Drake or the Smiths, but
The
just
Cure
in general,
might even be a better example of that, because they do have that,
But I think maybe it's almost better for them to have like sadder, darker lyrics with happier music, because if you're playing like happy music with happy lyrics, you get like shiny, happy people, right? It's like, oh God,
it's too much.
It's a little too much, right? And I would rather have it. Actually, it doesn't need to necessarily be happy. I just like lyrics that just, words that sound good together, that are like poetic and that sound.
You get like Billy Joel, like trying to write happy songs even though you're a sad fuck. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it would be. That's kind of what I think of with stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to be disingenuous, but I think is for me, lyrics really stand out as being quote unquote bad, or I don't like that when it's like. When it's just way too simple,
schlocky, schlocky.
It's just like cheesy or pretentious and over. You know what I mean? Like just like too messagey.
And Nick Drake's neither of those. He's a great lyricist.
So that's
really
why.
Is.
So that's how I can listen to this and not pay attention to the lyrics, but also just let the music happen and appreciate lyrics, because I can also recognize like this guy's a poet. This guy's writing some interesting things. I'm just not taking the time to really figure out what that is. So yeah.
And by the way, I found out that the Nick Drake did write Northern Sky, the song, but the arrangement of the song musically was by John Cale. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he did the music and.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, though, he should get a writing credit for that. If you're arranging the music, like that's a pretty critical aspect of the song.
I don't think Nick Drake was going to deny him of it. I think probably the people around him saw a gentle soul, and I don't know if they were like, "Ooh, Nick Drake, your last album sold terribly. Like, I'm going to need a writing credit on that." I think John Cale, who himself was an interesting dude, probably saw somewhat of a kindred spirit,
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like in terms of like the actual song itself, and it's not just Nick Drake. Like you could talk about this with what George Martin did with the Beatles, like if you got a producer or somebody that's arranging the music in a way that makes the song what it is. to me,
like the Elton John, Benny Taupin deal, where one's writing the lyrics.
Taupin wrote the lyrics. And John Lewis wrote this. I'm talking more about the producer that's arranging. If you have like an orchestra or strings or whatever, you have to have somebody in there to be able to transpose the stuff and be like, okay, you're going to do this part, and it's a critical part of it. And I think
but that would mean that every producer would be a member of the band or the artist.
My point. I'm not saying like they need to get their due. I'm saying that it's to me, it's as important as the person that actually writes the chords and the
Fair
song
enough.
itself.
Yep.
So that's all I'm saying.
Well, so is the sound engineer when you think of it that way. Yeah, in many ways.
Yep. So yeah, I guess we're all middling to positive on this album.
I think we all see it as a step up. Yeah.
I would say that the album cover doesn't really do it any favors. He looks depressed on the cover.
It's a weird neon kind of 70s, like it's like whoever the graphic designer was. That I don't know if they didn't.
Well, the lettering screams 70s. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
his shoes are very interesting. They're like kind of high top shoes.
They're like
platform.
They're weird. Yeah.
Probably
they're like
don't
loafers, but higher. Or something.
I wonder if he's sad because they won't fit. He's like, I bought these shoes and they won't fit.
That was his only problem. He just couldn't get.
Yeah, he was happy until he put the shoes on, and then he's like, no, I'm sad.
He does look like a modern indie rock singer, though, doesn't he? In that, like all the way down to being like tall and lanky and like too big for the chair. It's like perfect.
He doesn't. In 5 Leaves Left, he looks like that too. He's kind of
Well, he's the same dude. So
That's amazing. He looks the same. It must be the same guy.
The third one, he just wears a fake mustache, Matt. So it's gonna be a whole different guy.
He does the Bobby Valentine thing after he gets thrown out of the game. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Guy incognito.
All right.
But check this one out. It's a step in the right direction. I'm looking forward to Pink Moon, actually.
Yep.